Brothers and sisters, I want you to lean in today because what I'm about to share isn't just a word. It's a witness. Life has a way of putting us through tests, and not just any tests, but the kind that shake the foundation of who we are. These aren't quizzes that measure your knowledge. These are trials that measure your character, your faith, your endurance, and your surrender to God. When you pass the hardest test of your soul, one of the very first signs is peace, where there used to be panic. Think back to the days when you were easily shaken, when every small disruption would cause you to fall apart, when the uncertainty of life sent you spiraling into anxiety and fear. You would lie awake at night, worrying about what was to come, replaying mistakes of the past, asking yourself questions that had no answers. You trembled when storms came because your eyes were fixed on the waves instead of the one who controls the sea. But over time, through trials that stretched you, tears that humbled you, and moments where you had no choice but to lean on God, something inside you shifted. The panic that once gripped your soul began to loosen its hold. You learned to breathe differently, to think differently, to trust differently. Peace began to replace panic. Not because your circumstances changed, but because you changed in the midst of your circumstances. This peace is not the fragile kind the world offers, where you only feel calm when everything is going right. No, this peace is built on a deeper foundation, a peace that holds steady even when life is unraveling around you. It is the peace that keeps you grounded when people walk out of your life, when doors close, when prayers take longer than expected to be answered. Instead of collapsing under the weight of the unknown, you find yourself standing taller because your confidence is no longer in what you see, but in what you believe. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of assurance. It is the calm in your spirit that says, even if the storm rages, I know who is in the boat with me. When your soul has passed its hardest test, you begin to respond differently to the very situations that once broke you down. Before, when betrayal struck, your heart would crumble in anger and pain. But now you are able to forgive and move forward without carrying bitterness. Before, when your finances ran low, your spirit would sink into despair. But now you rest in the knowledge that provision always finds its way to you when you walk in faith. Before, when you faced rejection, you felt worthless, but now you understand rejection is often redirection, and you find peace in trusting that closed doors mean greater doors are on the horizon. This peace is not something you can manufacture on your own. It comes after being refined through fire, after realizing that panic never solved a problem, but prayer did. It comes when you remember how many nights you thought you wouldn't make it, yet here you are, still standing. Every scar became a testimony, every valley a classroom, every tear a seed watered into wisdom. With each trial, your panic grew weaker, and your peace grew stronger, until one day you looked back and realized you had crossed a threshold. You no longer respond the same way. You no longer break at the same places. You no longer tremble at the same shadows. When others around you are losing their minds, you are steady. When fear whispers in your ear, you silence it with truth. When chaos erupts, you carry a quiet strength. This is evidence that your soul has been tested and found faithful. Panic was once your natural reaction, but now peace has become your supernatural response. And that peace, my friend, is proof that you have passed one of the hardest tests your soul will ever face. Strength is one of the most undeniable signs that you have come through the hardest test of your soul. Not the kind of strength that shows itself in outward appearances or physical might, but the deep, quiet, and unshakable strength that comes from surviving what once threatened to destroy you. Think about those moments in your journey when you whispered to yourself, "I can't go on." The nights when your tears soaked the pillow and you were sure you had reached the end. The days when your heart felt like it couldn't take another disappointment, another betrayal, another delay. In those moments, you were convinced you didn't have what it took. Yet, somehow you are still here. You did not just crawl through. You endured, you fought, you pressed, and you rose. That is strength. That is the evidence that your soul has been fortified. This kind of strength is not obvious in the beginning. In fact, when you are in the middle of the test, you may feel the weakest you've ever felt. You may look at yourself and think you are breaking apart. But the truth is, strength is forged in weakness. It is in the moments when you thought you couldn't endure. One more step, that strength was quietly being built within you. Just like muscles only grow when they are torn and rebuilt, your inner strength grew every time your soul was stretched, torn, and healed again. The pain you endured became the training ground for the resilience you now carry. People may look at you today and see the strength you walk with, but they don't always see the process that built it. They don't see the prayers whispered in the dark when you had no words left. They don't see the days you showed up with shaky hands but refused to quit. They don't see the countless times you fell down and got back up. But that is where true strength was born, in the hidden battles, in the silent struggles, in the moments nobody applauded, but heaven kept record. That strength is not about appearances. It is about endurance. It is about persistence. It is about the power to keep moving when everything in you wants to stop. You know you've passed the test of your soul when you surprise yourself with your own resilience. Situations that would have crushed you years ago now barely shake you. What once left you speechless with pain now becomes an opportunity for you to testify about the goodness of God. People wonder how you are still standing, how you keep smiling, how you keep giving, how you keep hoping after all that life has thrown at you. And the only answer you can give is that strength was not something you earned. It was something God grew inside you as you walked through the fire. Strength after the test is different than the strength you thought you had before. Before, you may have believed you were strong because things were easy, because you hadn't yet faced the breaking points. But once life tested your soul with losses you didn't expect, with heartbreaks you didn't see coming, with struggles you didn't think you could carry, that's when true strength was revealed. It's easy to call yourself strong when you've never had to lift the heavy weight of sorrow, loneliness, or uncertainty. But when you have carried those burdens and still moved forward, that is when your strength becomes undeniable. This strength is not loud or boastful. It doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. It simply shows itself in how you endure, how you persevere, how you remain grounded. It shows itself in the way you face new challenges without the same fear that once paralyzed you. It shows itself in how you comfort others because you know what it feels like to be broken and to rise again. Strength is not about never falling. It is about rising every time you fall. Strength is not about never feeling weak. It is about finding power, even in your weakness. Strength is not about avoiding pain. It is about allowing pain to become the soil where your endurance grows. When you have passed the hardest test of your soul, strength becomes your testimony. It becomes the quiet authority you carry when you walk into a room. It becomes the reason people draw courage from your life. And it becomes the assurance in your spirit that if you could endure what you already went through, you can face whatever lies ahead. This strength doesn't come from you alone. It is a gift forged in the fire, a power refined by the hardest tests, and a living proof that you are no longer who you used to be. When your soul has endured the hardest test and come through on the other side, one of the clearest signs is that gratitude begins to overflow from your heart in every season. Gratitude is no longer something you practice only when life is good or when prayers are answered exactly how you hoped. It becomes the song of your spirit, the posture of your heart, the language you speak no matter what life throws at you. Before the test, your thankfulness was often tied to circumstances. If the bills were paid, you said thank you. If you were healthy, you said thank you. If relationships were going smoothly, you said thank you. But when things turned upside down, when loss knocked at your door, when you faced delay after delay, gratitude evaporated, and complaining or despair quickly filled the space. That's what it looks like when gratitude is conditional. But after the hardest test of your soul, gratitude becomes unconditional, rooted not in what you hold in your hands, but in who holds your future. Think back to moments when your soul was crushed, when everything seemed to be falling apart. You cried out for deliverance, yet the answer didn't come right away. In those seasons, you discovered that gratitude was not about tallying blessings, but about trusting promises. You learned to thank God for keeping you, even when He hadn't yet delivered you. You learned to thank Him for strength, even when the pain was still present. And slowly, that gratitude began to change you. It shifted your focus from what was missing to what was sustaining you. You realized that even in the darkest valley, there was something to give thanks for. The breath in your lungs, the lessons in your struggles, the unseen protection that surrounded you. Over time, gratitude became more than an occasional response. It became your new perspective. You began to see life through the lens of grace. Things you once overlooked now shine with meaning. The small blessings you used to take for granted now bring you joy. You wake up with thankfulness for another chance to live, another chance to grow, another chance to walk in purpose. Even in the middle of trials, you notice the ways God sprinkles signs of His presence, and you thank Him for those reminders. Gratitude rewires your heart. It shifts you from asking, "Why me?" to declaring, "Thank you for trusting me to endure this and come out stronger." The beauty of gratitude after passing the test is that it is not shallow. It is not fragile. It is born out of survival, refined in struggle, anchored in faith. When you've walked through the hardest valley and still found reasons to be thankful, you develop a kind of gratitude that cannot be shaken. People around you may wonder how you can smile when you've lost so much, how you can speak hope when life has handed you hardship. But what they don't understand is that gratitude has become your shield against despair. By giving thanks, you protect your heart from bitterness. By giving thanks, you disarm the power of pain. By giving thanks, you declare that your story is not defined by what you lost, but by what you gained in wisdom, faith, and resilience. Gratitude also changes how you treat others. When your soul has passed the test, you no longer envy what others have because you are too busy being thankful for what you have. You no longer compete or compare because you've learned that joy is not about accumulation but appreciation. You celebrate others genuinely because you know gratitude makes room for more blessings. Your relationships are healthier because gratitude teaches you to honor people while you have them instead of regretting their value after they're gone. Gratitude makes you more compassionate, more patient, more forgiving, because you will recognize every day is a gift. Perhaps the greatest power of gratitude is that it creates joy. Joy and gratitude are inseparable twins. The more you give thanks, the more joy you experience, even in the middle of chaos. Gratitude doesn't deny pain. It transforms it. It doesn't erase loss. It teaches you to treasure what remains. It doesn't guarantee tomorrow. It teaches you to cherish today. And when your soul has passed its hardest test, you live each day with gratitude that flows naturally because you no longer need everything to be perfect in order to give thanks. Gratitude becomes your anthem, your response, your way of seeing the world. That is how you know the test has not only been passed, but has transformed you into someone who finds treasure in every trial. One of the clearest signs that you have passed the hardest test of your soul is when you finally release what you cannot control. Before the test, you spent so much energy trying to hold everything together. You tried to manage outcomes, force timelines, fix people, and open doors that were never meant for you. You wore yourself out believing that if you just worked harder, prayed longer, worried enough, or strategized better, then things would fall into place. But time after time, life reminded you that there are limits to human control. People walked away no matter how much you loved them. Opportunities closed no matter how prepared you were. Circumstances shifted in ways you never predicted. At first, this made you feel powerless and frustrated. You questioned yourself. You questioned others. And you even questioned God. But through the refining fire of your hardest test, you learned something invaluable. Control was never truly yours to begin with. When your soul has endured its deepest test, you stop clinging to the illusion that you are in charge of everything. Instead, you begin to surrender, not in defeat, but in freedom. Releasing control is not about giving up. It is about handing over the weight that was never yours to carry. You realize that you were never meant to manage the universe, heal every wound, or force every outcome. You finally understand that some battles are not yours, but belong to God. And when you stop fighting battles that aren't yours, you discover a peace and a freedom you never knew before. The sleepless nights fade because you no longer replay scenarios in your head, trying to figure out how to manipulate them into working. The anxiety lessens because you trust that what is meant for you will find you, and what is not meant for you will pass you by. Releasing what you cannot control does not mean you stop caring or stop trying. It means you learn the difference between responsibility and obsession. You are responsible for your actions, your choices, and your heart, but you are not responsible for how others respond, how seasons shift, or how doors open and close. Passing the test of your soul teaches you this distinction in a way no book, no sermon, no advice could ever teach you. It is learned only in the fire, only when you've exhausted yourself trying to carry what was never yours, and finally fall your knees and surrender. And when you do, you discover that surrender is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. There is power in letting go. You begin to see how many chains you had wrapped around yourself because of your need for control. You held on to relationships that were toxic because you thought you could change people. You stayed in places too long because you thought you could force doors to open. You carried guilt and shame because you thought you could undo the past. But when you pass the test, you learn to release it all. You let people be who they are. You allow doors to close and trust that better ones are ahead. You stop rehearsing your mistakes and instead accept grace for today. This release doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you choose freedom over frustration. This release also makes space for new blessings. When your hands are clenched tightly around what you cannot control, they are too full to receive what is meant for you. But once you open your hands, once you let go of what is draining you, you create room for peace, joy, and opportunity. Suddenly, you begin to notice doors opening effortlessly, people entering your life who bring genuine love and growth, and a sense of direction that is not forced, but divinely guided. What once felt like loss now feels like freedom. What once felt like failure now feels like alignment. Another sign of release is how you speak. Before you spoke words of fear and control. What if this doesn't work? What if they leave? What if I fail? But after passing the test, your language changes. You say, if it's meant to be, it will be. If they stay, they are meant to stay. If this door closes, it wasn't mine to walk through. Your speech reveals your surrender, and your surrender reveals your growth. You no longer live in panic mode, trying to orchestrate everything. You live in trust mode, allowing life to unfold while you remain anchored in faith. Releasing what you cannot control transforms not only your spirit, but your relationships. You stop suffocating others with expectations they were never designed to fulfill. You stop resenting people for not being who you wanted them to be. You love more freely. You forgive more quickly. And you walk more lightly. The heaviness of control is gone, and in its place is the lightness of freedom. That is how you know your soul has matured. That is how you know you have passed the test. You no longer hold the world in your grip. You place it in God's hands, and in doing so, you finally learn how to live. When your soul has been through the hardest test and survived, another undeniable sign emerges: compassion for others who are still walking through their own storms. Before the trial, it was easy to sit in judgment. You saw people struggling with their faith, falling into bad choices, or breaking down under pressure, and you thought, why can't they just be stronger? Why can't they just get it together? You looked at their tears and questioned their resilience. You saw their mistakes and forgot that you had your own. But when life humbled you, when you walked through the valley, where you couldn't find your way out, when you cried prayers so broken, you could barely form the words, something changed in you. The hardest test broke down the walls of pride and replaced them with empathy. Suddenly, you understood what it meant to be human, fragile, and dependent on grace. This compassion is different from pity. Pity looks down from a distance, but compassion draws near. Compassion says, I know how it feels, because I've been there too. Passing the hardest test of your soul gives you a new lens through which you see others. Instead of condemning people for their weaknesses, you begin to see them through the eyes of mercy. You remember the nights you almost gave up, and that memory softens your response to those who are close to giving up right now. You remember the moments you were misunderstood, and so you choose to listen more carefully. You remember the times when you desperately needed encouragement, and so you offer encouragement freely. Compassion is born from pain transformed into wisdom. And when you carry it, you become a vessel of healing for others. This compassion shapes how you interact with the world. You no longer rush to offer easy answers to difficult problems. You no longer dismiss someone's struggle just because it isn't yours. Instead, you learn to sit with people in their pain, to give them presence rather than lectures, to extend kindness rather than judgment. When your soul has been tested, you realize that sometimes what people need is not a solution, but a reminder that they are not alone.